Leisure World resident Susan Saraf worked in the world of catering for over 30 years.
How did you start in this business? How did this all come about?
I used to live in Laguna Beach, and I realized that I wanted to be a professional staff person or a wait staff person, and so I just wanted to learn everything there was about it, and I worked in some nice restaurants in Laguna Beach.
After working and owning businesses in the restaurant field, opportunity knocked.
Mary Micucci, the owner of Along Came Mary, was just starting her company too, and she heard about me and my enthusiasm, and she said, would you like to come and work with my company, and I'd like you to train the staff, teach them how to wait fine dining, the whole concept of fine dining. So I wrote a manual and taught these young people how to give the very best service they could in a catering capacity, because usually fine dining and catering doesn't go hand in hand. I worked in the production end of it, so I would go out in advance, decorate tables, meet the people that I was going to be working with, build a rapport with them, and so just basically set up before our staff would come out.
You said you were up in LA, you were working in that area?
Our main office is in Pico and La Brea, but I was often in New York. I worked at Tavern on the Green, I set up parties there, and in Hawaii, in Kona at the Four Seasons. We did a lot of parties in Colorado and Vail, and a Steamboat, and a lot of events there.
How did people contact you to be able to go to New York or Hawaii?
Right, well, we had a reputation. The lady that I worked for, Along Came Mary Micucci, was one of the most prominent, well-known caterers in Los Angeles. So if anyone wanted the very best party, they would call her. She had a reputation.
So it wasn't just the food industry. You're talking publicity. There was a whole wide range of things here.
It was a production company, so it's never just a caterer. It's events. For instance, Leslie Moonves was the head of CBS at the time, and I worked here in Los Angeles, in North Hollywood and in Hollywood at the CBS studios. So when they had large corporate parties or the board meetings, I would be called in and they would recognize me. So doing it many, many years, I was just, people felt comfortable. They saw me and, the temperature in the room is just a little off. Could you arrange to have this made for so I was kind of attention to detail. Yeah.
You were the lead person that went out for the company to get things going.
Right, but there were many of us. There was a whole group of us that went. It wasn't just me. I had a team. We worked together.
Talk about the personality that you have to do this.
Which I was kind of like a very fancy concierge person on site. So it's just those special little things that they needed that they could call on me to take care of.
Does the catering group come in after you've kind of set things up?
We did a lot of parties for the folks that own Campbell's Soup Company, for instance. And they would do, so we would bring in our people to set up the tents, put down carpeting, custom-made antler chandeliers.
Amazing. We'll talk about some of the customers because you got to be that detail-oriented to have things just right. Talk about the customers and some of the experiences that you had there.
Our motto was never say no. If anybody asked for anything, you just always would figure out a way to accommodate. One of my favorite memories was we were doing a party. It was honoring Lauren Bacall, and it was at the Academy on Wilshire in Beverly Hills. And she was going to be interviewed, and she was going to be on stage. And she asked for a vodka, but we didn't have vodka. And I said, would you like wine or beer? Because I don't want to say no. I just said, wine or beer? She said, no, I want vodka. And she sat down and just started to pout and would not let any photographers, interviewers come near her until she got her vodka. So I just jumped in my car, and I know Beverly Hills pretty well. I went to the nearest liquor store, bottle of vodka, put it in a chilled glass and brought it to her. And, in her deep, raspy, smoky voice, thank you, threw it back, and she stood up and continued with the interviews. Whew.
So what about some of your favorite venues? You talked about Tavern on the Green. That's pretty tops.
Well, you know, I worked a lot of venues, mostly in Beverly Hills, at the nice hotels, the Beverly Hills Hotel, the Beverly Hilton. But my favorite is working in a home like Neil Simon's home, for instance, the playwright. They have the most amazing artwork. You'll never be able to see it. The average person does not get to see fine artwork. And so I had the privilege of being in these homes where I was in awe of the art that I was able to see. That was probably my favorite.
You were traveling a lot because
Yes.
you had to go to these different cities as well on top of that. So talk a little bit about that, going to different places and then having to coordinate as soon as you hit the ground.
Well, everything was in the works for many, many months. So when I got there, it was all well established what was going to happen, the game plan, the timeline. We were working closely with decorators and the florist. So I'd get to the party sites, have huge meetings, meeting after meeting, meet with the clients, and just go over all the details, and then discuss the staff arriving on location and how it was going to go down. Do we have meals set up for everybody, and who's cooking the meals? When will they eat? So there was a lot of details.
So the type of venues were not just restaurants. You were in people's homes.
Barbra Streisand's wedding, and talk about trying to keep out paparazzi. Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston's wedding. But we also, like the largest wedding or party that we ever did was the 10,000 people, employees party for Universal Studios. And that was so much fun because it takes you couldn't imagine how much organization it takes to host 10,000 people. And these aren't like fancy people, these are working people. People that the grips so they're not really, they just brought their families and they just wanted to party. So like at Universal Studios, they have a Western town, they have, where Back to the Future was shot out in front of the courtroom, So each town in Universal Studios was set up to handle 1,000 guests. And so I was usually in the Western town. So my whole team, there would be about 100 staff dressed up in Western garb. And then when we'd open up the party, everybody is on communication and walkie-talkies. We're now going to open, out west now, and then the people start flowing in. And then once that group of people, and then you started just kind of directing people to different areas. So you never want to see people waiting in line.
What was the most challenging part of this whole job that you were part of?
It was kind of a challenge that we all embraced. It's like, oh, this is going to be fun. How are we going to solve this problem? Running. So just basically problem solving. But we were always, because we had such endless amount of usually money, I hate to say, it was never an issue. And we just did what we had to do to make everybody happy. I know that some of the smaller caterers, like, well, it's not in the budget, we can't do this, and they might say no. This would just a whole different attitude.
You were at a totally different level.
Absolutely. Oscar parties, the night before the Oscars, we do these wonderful parties in Beverly Hills. And it was pretty amazing. I would leave and it was light out.
Through time, Susan's reputation was crystal clear.
Got to know a lot of the clientele. Did a lot of things at Barbra Streisand, Harrison Ford's house, and I had the honor of taking care of the Dalai Lama, and it was neat because when I go to places, a lot of times Susie, hey, how's it going? Could you get me a special glass of wine, maybe something that's, set aside for VIPs. It was just fun to be able to pamper people.
And experiences with the well-known like Maya Angelou and the Dalai Lama produced wonderful memories.
Well, they were doing a fundraiser in Beverly Hills at Harrison Ford's house. And so they asked if I wanted to go up and help serve on a buffet. And I was in the office working, and sure. So the Dalai Lama was there, and he came through the buffet, and I said, would you care for some beef? And I said, maybe you don't eat beef. And he was explaining to me, he goes, oh no, if an animal dies out of respect to the animal, if it has to be killed or it dies, it's my religion is you eat it in honor, to show it respect. And then he asked about the Italian breadsticks. He was like, well, what are these? And so I showed him, and he snapped them, because that's a sign of a good breadstick, that they crisp. And he started giggling, and we couldn't get him to stop laughing because of these breadsticks. He thought it was the most amazing thing. Anyways, he was very, very sweet, just the nicest guy.
Maya Angelou, talk a little bit about her and how that came about.
We were doing a party on Vine Street in a theater, and I don't know if she was the guest of honor but she was there, and she saw me and she called me over, and she said, what is your nationality? And she said, well, I said, I'm Greek. She said, did you know I was married to a Greek man? And I said, no, I had no idea. When we started talking, she was just so personable, so lovely. It was amazing. And my boss at the time came over and said, you need to break it up and get back to work. And so Maya Angelou looked at my boss and said, excuse me, we are having a conversation here. She, and said, go away. And so.
How did it all wind down to say, okay, it's time to ride off into the sunset?
The last party I did was just before COVID for, you're familiar with the Seagramson Center? Mm-hmm. Julia and George Argus, they were having a party in, out in the desert. I can't remember what city, but that was her birthday party, and so I went out there for several days, and that was the last party. And she's good friends with Barry Manilow, so he came and performed, and we had synchronized swimmers in the swimming pool. It was over the top.
So you're retired now. Talk about a couple of the things that you like doing now that you're retired. You're at Leisure World. What's your interests?
Well, I have a sailboat, and I love to sail, so I go back and forth to Catalina with my partner. Mm-hmm. And when I'm over there, I like to fish and kayak. So I spend as much time on the water as I can. I like to do bareboat chartering. I've gone to Tahiti a couple times, and so I'll get a group of people together. Mm-hmm. I'll do the food. I ask each person, you'll bring 2 pounds of coffee, you'll bring a couple cans of tuna, and I have a budget, so I have to do it differently. But so I like to organize trips and take vacations, and I love the tropics and the water. I like to go to Hawaii often. And that's where I got into hula.
Well, you've had quite the career here, Susan, and we really appreciate you being with us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you, Owen, for asking me.